David Brewster here with a new episode of 3 for All. This is 3 Danny Gatton Licks from 1989, and I've had some requests to feature some of the legendary late great Danny Gatton's music, and definitely a monster guitarist. And Danny's career started around 1959, and he released 7, solo albums under his own name in his lifetime. And currently there's around 20 albums related to Danny, floating around out there. So they've released around 12 albums after his passing. But definitely, just a badass guitarist. Well-versed in country and rockabilly and funk and jazz and blues and rock. Definitely, he could seemingly do it all, and he was commonly referred to as the world's greatest unknown guitarist. A legend. So if you're unfamiliar with Danny's name or his music, there's a 2-album live set that I'm going to steer you toward, and I highly recommend any of his solo, studio albums. But the Redneck Jazz Explosion Volume 1 and also Volume 2 was recorded live in Washington, D.C. on New Year's Eve in 1979. And the Redneck Jazz Explosion was a group that Danny worked with Buddy Emmons. And Buddy played pedal steel, Danny obviously played guitar. And Buddy and Danny together is just pure dynamite. They're pushing each other, they're playing licks and playing circles around each other. It's very impressive. And when I first heard those albums, it just completely blew my mind. Check these out. Speaking of being blown away by Danny Gatton and his music, if you haven't seen it already, you totally have to check out his classic Hot Licks Telemaster instructional video from back in the day, and how Leonard, kind of reformatted and re-released this classic instructional video in a book form with an online, video portal. But all the notation and the examples and everything are kind of updated and retranscribed. A great series, and I've talked about this on my channel before, but this video will blow your mind and blow your doors wide open. I wanted to share this too because it's really the only time that this is appropriate for me to talk about, but I saw Danny Gatton at the Cotton Club in Atlanta, Georgia in 1993, and I wasn't even old enough to get in, but I was there. I have the ticket stub and everything, and I remember it vividly. And, I started playing in bars and stuff when I was 15, so sneaking into a bar at that age really wasn't that big of a deal. I really wanted to see Danny Gatton, so that means I've been a fan for over 30 years, and let me assure you, live, he just completely melted my face off. It was amazing. So the licks and ideas shared in this episode came from a live TV appearance in 1989 featuring Danny Gatton, and I tried to figure out where it was filmed. It might have been in the DC area, or it could have been somewhere else, but I couldn't figure out where it was shot. But definitely it was a really cool interview, and there was plenty of jamming and talking about the guitar and his influences and stuff. It was a really cool interview. And I grabbed some really cool licks. So here we go. All right, the first lick's this raked bending idea, and it has this plucky, clucky sound that's really interesting. Something like this. One more time. So we're basically raking a lot in this lick, and we're going to bend this B up to C sharp and then fret that C sharp on the B string, but before that you're going to rake into that bend. That kind of percussive muted sound into that bent note, like that. And you might want to exaggerate it at first just to get the idea in your head, like that. And then you're going to move up here, grab this D, bend that to E, and fret that E, but rake before the bend. And then this E up to F sharp and fret that F sharp, but once again rake before the bend, like that. And then you're going to catch this F sharp and rake into that note, like that. And then catch this E, then you're going to grab this B, but you want to do a pre-bend and release. You're going to bend it up a half step to C and release it to B, like that. Grab this A to G, and then this E, E flat, D. Pause right there, and then D flat, C to B, and end on A. So really slow there. Something like that, all the way through the lick, really slow, like painfully slow. And you're kind of stopping on that D as far as the phrasing there. And you're kind of surrounding it by all those chromatic moves. And then up to speed, it's like this. The next idea reveals some of Danny's tasty blues phrasing, and this is in C7, and something like this. One more time. So like I said, we're in C7, and there's a reverse rake happening. Danny definitely seemed fond of raking into notes and bends and stuff. So he's starting here. You're going to basically start with that G, walk up to that D note, and then slide into E. And he was using his pinky for the slide, like that. And then right there, you're going to do this reverse rake, and you're going to basically do a pull-off, like that. So I'm basically hitting, like starting on the high E string, and the high E and B are muted, and then you hear that F kind of release, you know, and pull off down to E flat, like that. And after that pull off, the rake and then the pull off, you're gonna end on that G, and that's a weird phrase, right? Like this. And it sounds cool too, if you do it right, because you're hearing that kind of a percussive mute at the top, and then the pull-off slur, and then finally that low G. So it definitely catches your attention, like, what the heck is that? Like that. And then he starts doing... Right, so this, B flat to C, and then this, kind of minor to major hammer-on pull-off move. Kind of catches that G, and then end on that B flat to C. So the whole lick kind of slow. Something like that. Definitely busy, and I like the kind of, slip and slide moves, and just cool phrasing all the way around. You gotta dig those rakes too, that's so cool. Okay, next up's a double stop Rockabilly legato lick, and this is very unusual, but it's also really cool, but it's also really hard to play. Something like this, it's definitely a handful. And you just don't find licks like this anymore. But he's basically doing double stops on the B and the high E, and then he's also doing legato. It's very unusual. Something like this, really slow. He's basically doing, right? So it's 2 notes at a time, and you could definitely find this, like single notes, right? But we're doing it as double stops like that. It's really weird. That's basically like, around E6 kind of. And then he moves it up here, and that's basically like A6 now. Right? So you can kind of hear like a chord progression there. And you're basically doing the exact same thing, higher that you did down there. Move it up here and do it again. And then back down. And he kind of ends it with this A, kind of slid off, or something like that. It's a very clunky, weird phrase, and my hand isn't quite there yet, because I've never really done that until I put this episode together. That's really weird, because you're flattening your fingers and barring double stops, but then you're also doing like this twisted legato, move like that. That's really hard to do. Or at least it's hard to do to make it sound like Danny does. You know, it's amazing. Okay, here's a bonus lick from this footage, and it's appropriate because this is the last example in this lesson, and this is basically, it could be used as a jazzy intro, which is how Danny, you know, used it in this example, but you could also use it as a jazzy ending, and it's using a ringing harmonic, which I really like licks like this, like this. One more time. Basically in C, or you know, C major 7, kind of jazzy, and he's basically hitting this A harmonic to start with, lets that ring, and then he starts doing right like this, and then right there, and that's really interesting because there you're moving from the A to the G, you know, you're catching this G note and then catching that F. Right there's the minor to major third, that E flat to E. And then right there, you're grabbing that G, B to that C. And then right there, at the end, that's basically like a B flat sus4 over F. Kind of that shock and awe kind of chord. But something like this. You know, definitely a cool jazzy lick. And some of that phrasing at the top. That's tricky right there. The way you're kind of skipping strings and kind of leaping, you know, between notes. You know, but really cool lick. That's going to wrap this episode of 3 for All with 3 Danny Gatton Licks from 1989. Definitely a dynamite, sorely missed guitarist that was just a total badass. I mean, he could play jazz and country and rockabilly and rock and roll and funk and bluegrass and all these different styles with authority, like a master. And, you know, there's a lot of guitarists out there that definitely consider him one of the greatest guitarists of all time. Steve Vai is one of those players. And, you know, watching him live in concert blew my mind, watching his instructional video, listening to his music, also listening to other guitarists talk about Danny. There's a lot of respect and definitely a lot of music, you know, surrounding this legendary guitarist. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.